Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At Barnabas Health, we believe citizens need to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support healthcare programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation and their partners on public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health Life is Better Healthy, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, Wells Fargo, PSE&G, committed to improving New Jersey's economy and strengthening its communities, Johnson & Johnson, and by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to a very special series we call Gone But Not Forgotten, where we talk with some of New Jersey and national figures that had a great impact on our lives. On this particular edition of Gone But Not Forgotten, we talk to the one, the only, former mayor of New York City, Ed Koch. Ed Koch had roots in New Jersey. He actually lived in Newark, born in the Bronx, but lived in Newark. I sat down in 1993 with Ed Koch in his New York City law office. As usual, he had a lot to say about a whole range of issues, and more than once he asked, as he famously would do often during parades or rallies, "How am I doing?" Well, Ed Koch in this interview was doing just fine. 1993, gone but not forgotten. The one, the only, Ed Koch. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for joining us in this special edition of CAUCUS New Jersey. Let's talk about New Jersey. A lot of people don't know this, but you spent 10 years in Newark, from 7 to 17.
Right. We moved back to Brooklyn in 1941, and we came to Newark in 1931 during the Depression.
From the Bronx?
From the Bronx. My father had gone bankrupt. He was in the fur industry, and people didn't buy fur coats during the Depression, and we went to Newark, and my father got a concession for a hat check concession at Kruger's Auditorium, which no longer exists. It was on Belmont Avenue.
And the Wickwake section?
No, the Wickwake section is in a different area. Fact is, the Wickwake section, you had to be rich.
Which your family was?
No, we were poor. We were poor. And we first lived on Spruce Street, near Quitman, near High. And actually, the address was 90 Spruce Street. I don't even know if it's still there. And then, as we got better economically, we moved to a little bit better neighborhood. I would say middle income, low middle income. And that was 61 Milford Avenue. And
what was that Newark like?
Well, that Newark was a wonderful little town. And up until the time we moved, it was a wonderful little town.
Let's fast forward. Let's talk about New Jersey today.
Yeah.
All right. New York-New Jersey relations. I remember an ad many years ago when you were mayor, where there was a picture of you by the Lincoln Tunnel, I think it was, and you were
the Holland Tunnel.
The Holland Tunnel, and you were shutting it.
Right.
Shutting it off so that business could no longer go from New York to New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, we were making a statement. In those days, you know, I became mayor in 1978, actually elected in 77, and the city was on the balls of its rear end, and businesses had left, and we had lost hundreds of thousands of jobs, and everybody was in a terrible state of mind. And I had to do two things. One, I had to bring the city back to fiscal stability, and equally important, give the city a spirit which had disappeared. And so, you know, people don't believe this, but I'm a very retiring, shy person. I know people find it hard to believe in my private life.
But you can understand why they find it hard.
Yes, I do. But in my public life, I realized that you can't be shy and retiring and get people to follow you and be the leader of the city. So you will find that it's not a false personality. People have several aspects to their personality. And when you're on stage as mayor 24 hours a day, you have to create that special, charismatic spirit. I think I did. In fact, David Garth, who is the
Media advisor.
Media advisor and a very close personal friend, and who helped get me elected with his counsel, he said often, you know, your personality, your style got in the way of your substance. People don't know how much you did. Rather complimentary of him to say it. But I must say to you, I couldn't have done the substance without the style. They had to go hand in hand, because you had to encourage people to stay here. You had to encourage people who were not New Yorkers to come here when things were difficult. And they did, because they believed in me.
So that's why the poster. That's why.
That was part of it.
But New York did lose, and no matter how hard you worked, no matter how forceful your personality was. Talk to us about the New York, New Jersey thing, and why is there so much intense competition? We talk about a global economy. We're supposed to be a regional economy, competing with the rest of the world.
Those are all words. Let me explain to you what the situation is. If every jurisdiction, whether it was New Jersey and New York and Connecticut and Pennsylvania, didn't give governmental subsidies to attract businesses to either stay or to come to the area, I think we'd wipe the floor with everybody. But when you have to compete with the following, that New Jersey says, particularly Jersey City, we'll give you lower rents, we'll give you lower electricity, we'll give you lower taxes, then we have to do the same. But we cannot always meet you dollar for dollar, because it's more expensive to do business in the borough of Manhattan. This is the most expensive land in the world. And because it's narrow, it's small, it's very expensive. And so we had to meet, to some degree, the competition, and also to attract attention to what we were doing. And one of the ways you attract attention is you hire Madison Avenue people who come up with a campaign. Their campaign was to say, we're not going to let you out of town.
So that's why you shut down the
Yes, Koch is going to be like Horatio at the bridge, only in this case it's the Holland Town.
Okay. Talk a little bit more about New Jersey, somebody that you know fairly well, Jim Florio.
I like him. Now, what is interesting is the first time he ran, and I supported him, I didn't like him.
1989.
No, it wasn't.
Excuse me, 1981, I'm sorry, because he won in 89.
Yeah. I didn't really like him. I did it because of party loyalty, and I came to know and to like Tom Kean.
His opponent in 81.
Yes, who won.
Right.
And we still remain good friends.
You and Tom Kean.
Yes. But when Governor Florio ran the second time, and I helped again, I came to like him. I think it was his current wife that changed him.
Lucinda.
Yeah. I think she made him, I don't know, more compassionate, more responsive, more human.
Let me say this to you, Mayor. I've interviewed the governor many, many times. I will, in all honesty, I haven't always seen those characteristics come out. Maybe he has to feel particularly comfortable with you.
But you didn't know him when he didn't have them.
You're right. You have a point about that. But do you have a sense? Let's personality aside.
Yeah.
Let's talk tax policy. Jim Florio raises taxes $2.8 billion.
He did the right thing. Only he didn't sell it right. Absolutely, he did the right thing. You have to understand that New Jersey was in desperate need of money for educational purposes, to deal with its insurance problems, and the way taxes were then in effect, and the various costs of insurance, etc. The people who were getting hit were the low-income people, and what he did was to spread the pain and to add to New Jersey's income so you could do more for education and help the poorer areas. And I must say, when I interviewed him, as I did on my Sunday show.
You were at WCBS at the time.
At the time, yeah. I said to him, Governor, what you did is right, but I don't think you sold it. And that will come back to haunt you.
Is it a question of marketing with people?
Yes.
Because a lot of people said it's wrong, we don't want taxes raised. No. Are you saying that despite the policy itself, that the messenger is as important, if not more important, than the message
I
itself?
wouldn't say the messenger, the message. Because
and how it's packaged.
Yeah, how it's packaged. I mean, I believe that Governor Florio is a courageous, intelligent man who has done a magnificent job and has not been adequately appreciated, but will be with the passage of time. And today, with the passage of time, is much more popular than he was when the Republicans took both houses
of the legislature. So you say he wins this fall?
Well, I mean, I don't know New Jersey well enough to say that, but I certainly hope he does and believe he should.
Go back for a second. Quick comment on Tom Kean. You said he was a good friend.
Oh, yeah.
What do you like about him?
Well, he has a marvelous personality, a really warm guy who I think rarely made an enemy. I mean, even the people who didn't agree with him politically, Democrats, a lot of them, liked him. And there are people, this is genetic. This is, I mean, personality and character, I think, are mostly genetic. The impact of the people around you has something to do with it.
So even though there was a lot of competition between New York and New Jersey for jobs, sports
we
teams,
were
the whole bit,
always very close friends. And
despite all that.
Yes.
A couple of other names, because that's what happens on your radio show on WABC. People call you up, they want your opinion on things. Well, we want your opinion on some people that are in New Jersey or connected to New Jersey. Donald Trump seems like he's making a comeback. Big in Atlantic City.
He probably is me. He's a brash braggart who I don't personally like, and he doesn't like me.
Overrated?
Well, it depends on what you mean by
as a businessman.
That. He was a good developer. He built structures that architecturally were quite terrific. I just don't like him personally. The fact is, I don't know anybody who likes him personally.
Would he make a good politician?
Oh, I don't think so, because you see through him very quickly.
Okay.
You know how he was summed up by the deputy mayor on economic development. She's in my administration. She said, "I wouldn't believe Donald Trump if his tongue was notarized."
I'm not supposed to laugh at this stuff. Bill Bradley.
Well, I like Bill Bradley, and obviously he's one of those heroic figures, great athlete, and also a great scholar. And he has great courage, too. He did two things that I think stand out that people don't really appreciate. One was he voted correctly in support of the Contras when the Democratic radicals, and I'm a Democrat, but the people who were running our party for a long period of time were the radicals in our party rather than the vast majority of moderate mainstream Democrats. When the radicals were supporting Ortega and were against the Contras in Nicaragua, Bradley stood up to them and supported the Contras. The second thing he did was to talk about black violence. And that, you know, is not politically correct. And he stood up on the Senate floor, and his famous line, as I recall it, was, "And nobody says stop." He went through a whole host of things where it wasn't an attack upon the black community. It was an attack upon a portion of that community, and every community, white, Asian, Hispanic. We all have predators. But regrettably, because of the breakdown in the black family structure, which people are once again talking about, you have a disproportionate number of people in the black community who are committing crimes of violence. I mean, the number is actually...
Excuse me, I think you said recently, you said it was a statistic that you cited. You said 45% of the violent crime is committed by 6% of the population, black males.
That's correct. Those are figures that come from the federal government.
Someone might say, Mr. Mayor, that those comments are inflammatory.
I don't understand that. You know, when people say that to me, I say, you mean you're not allowed to talk about the truth? You know, when they, the people who suffer from those criminals are overwhelmingly black victims. Overwhelmingly, it is the black community that is victimized by a small group of predators in the black community.
So why is it that so many blacks seem to resent so much when a white politician or a white ex-politician speaks about the number of crimes committed by black males?
That is why Bill Bradley was so courageous. He had no fear, and he stood up and he talked about it.
He's the exception.
Well, I like to think I'm one of the exceptions,
in the Senate,
too.
though. Okay, but in the Senate, among...
Yes. Oh, yes. For example, Pat Moynihan, 30 years ago, with Nathan Glazer, talked about the breakdown in the black family. And he was pilloried, and he was excoriated. And he said to me, before he became a senator, that he was never, ever going to talk about that again. Because, unfairly, he was vilified for telling the truth, which was that you had to deal with a cancer that existed in our society, the disaffiliated in the black community, which came in large part from a breakdown in the family structure. And you had to address that issue. But they didn't want to hear about it. And that's not just blacks that didn't want to hear about it.
White liberals didn't want to hear about it?
White radicals, white liberals, they don't want to hear about it.
Has it changed at all, Mr. Mayor? I mean, are we
changing.
more willing to talk candidly about
yes.
race?
Blacks are willing to talk about it more candidly today. In fact, if you look at Jesse Jackson, his greatest message, for which he has to receive a lot of applause, and I have not supported Jesse Jackson for other messages which I disagreed with.
Largely having to do with Israel?
No, that's only a small part of it, largely having to do with the fact that he embraced Castro and
Arafat.
And his message, in my judgment, at times, was wildly radical. But on the other hand, you had to praise him, which I did, for talking about personal obligation and family obligation and staying in school and not taking drugs. I mean, he was a model for black youth. So what I'm simply saying is you can't deal with a cancer unless you identify it. After you've identified it, you can decide whether you have to remove it surgically or chemically or with x-rays or their counterparts when you're dealing with people.
What is David Dinkins' problem as mayor?
Well, he has several problems. Let me see if I can sort them out. The first is you either have charismatic leadership qualities or you don't. He doesn't. That's not his fault. He just doesn't. And this city needs it at this particular time because we're going through a difficult time. So that's number one. The second is he has brought a philosophy to this city which I think is very destructive, and that is he believes in racial quotas. Racial quotas in assignment of jobs and hiring, racial quotas in the awarding of contracts, not on the basis of merit. I wouldn't care if everybody in his government were black if they were the best of all those who applied, nor if everybody was white. It doesn't work that way. What works is that you have smart whites and dumb whites, smart blacks and dumb blacks, and you know, it's the bell curve. We're all subject to it. But he has people, and he supports them, like Hazel Dukes, who is the chairman of the New York State NAACP, a racist of the first order. How do I know that? She's the president of OTB, appointed because she was... Off-track betting, because she was David Dinkins' campaign manager, one of them. And she fired 9 whites at top levels and hired 8 blacks and 1 Hispanic. And she was charged with discrimination, and prima facie cases have already been established in at least 4 cases, I think, before the federal agency examining it. And this is a woman who prides herself on being the chairman of the NAACP.
So racist. What do you say to those, Mr. Mayor, blacks, who argue that blacks, quote, cannot be racist because they do not have the power to be racist?
Well, does that mean that David Dinkins has no power? He's the mayor. Does that mean that Ron Dellums, who is the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, that the president has to deal with in getting through a budget, and he's black, and Ron Brown, and I can give you so many others, that they have no power? It's ridiculous to take that position. And I'll go a little further. It's a little digression. You know, I told you earlier that the statistics are that 45% of all the crimes of violence based on arrests are committed by blacks. always, you must say, overwhelmingly against other blacks, but nevertheless, it is a very significant figure. And then there are other figures that are really interesting, and that blacks establish, from their point of view, indicative of racism. Let me tell you what I mean. They will say, 1 out of 4 young black males is either in jail or on probation or awaiting trial, more than are in college, 1 out of 4. But let me tell you why it's a false charge of racism. Because in Washington, D.C., which is a town that is 80% black, the mayor is black, the council is black, the judges are black, the number of young black males who are in jail is 42%, not 25, which is the national figure. And in Baltimore, where you have the same demographics, it's 53%. So you can't blame it on white racism, because the people who are putting them in jail are other blacks.
A couple of other things.
So they're false charges of racism, which are intended to prevent an honest discussion. And that is why...
Is that the crime of all this, Mr. Mayor, that there isn't an honest discussion about race in our society? Because everyone is so concerned about being called a racist, politically incorrect.
Listen, the worst charge you can make, in my judgment, against a white is to call him a racist, because then they run for the hills. They're just frightened to death. They don't know what to do.
They shut up, too.
And so they will shut up. So a false charge of racism is as bad, if not worse, as racism itself. And it, regrettably, is oftentimes used simply to silence people.
A couple of other things on David Dinkins. You talked about his problems hiring people that you say are racist. The issue of...
And his philosophy is quotas. I call that a racist philosophy. If David Dinkins has said that 20% of all the contracts the city gives out will go only to blacks, Hispanics, and women. Well, what kind of...
That's a racist policy.
Oh, I think so. Let me explain why. Supposing you are a white male and poorer than a black male, or a white woman or a black woman, or whatever you want to use as an illustration. Should you be deprived of bidding on a contract when maybe what you want to sell or the price you want to offer is better from the city's point of view, but simply because your skin is white and your gender is male, that you may not be involved in seeking to get the contract? It's an outrage.
Well, what do you say to those who argue that this needs to be done in order to, quote, make up for the past?
Well, I will tell you what you say. You know, you don't eliminate racism by creating reverse racism. All you do is to generate an anger that ultimately will overwhelm all of this, because 80% of America is white. Blacks are 12%. And Hispanics are about 8%. Now, you cannot say to white parents, your children will be deprived of equal opportunity in getting into a school, and a black will be given extra points for being black. That's not acceptable.
Mr. Mayor, you've said of your former political opponent, Mario Cuomo, you said a lot of things about him, but one thing that I read you said about him, there is less there than meets the eye.
Yeah. Well, you know, I
regret saying that?
No, I don't regret anything I've said. Sometimes I say I know I have to pay for it, but I don't regret saying it, no. Life's too short to regret telling the truth. This is my feeling about Mario Cuomo. He's a very gifted man. But the truth of the matter is that if you examine many of the statements that he makes, even the speech that he made in San Francisco, substantively, there's nothing there, or very little. But it is beautifully executed. I mean, what I have said on occasion is Mario Cuomo is the only person I know who can take any 5 English words and turn it into a Japanese haiku. Inexplicable and signifying nothing. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't say many good things, and he's a wonderful speaker, and I think he's been a good governor.
But overrated?
I wouldn't say he's overrated. I would say
people overrate
the
him?
Speeches.
Okay.
The speeches are given much too much applause because people don't analyze what they mean.
One more question on Cuomo. I remember a campaign. I was very young, on the other side of the river, but watching it on New York television. A heated battle between you and Mario Cuomo. Very famous or infamous slogan that came out of the Cuomo campaign, vicious comment. And it was, if I remember correctly, vote for Cuomo, not the homo.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Now, I won't tell you that the governor originated that campaign, but his campaign managers did, and I never forgave him for it, and I said that publicly, because he did it, oh yeah, sure. He did it twice. He did it in '77, his campaign did it, and again when we ran against one another in 1982 for governor,
one of his mayor, second time for governor.
One of his people upstate did exactly the same thing, and then he rewarded one of his campaign managers who was disbarred here in the city of New York for unethical action for a certain period of time. I think it's 5 years, and he gave him a job. And I have always said, probably that is the worst thing that he has ever done in his whole life.
Ed Koch, you've spent 25 years in public life, public service, and many more, obviously, being out in the public, but as a private citizen. I'm sure you've been asked this before, but how would you like to be remembered 20, 30 years down the line?
Well, I loved being the mayor of the city of New York, but I have no regrets that I'm no longer mayor, and I have no regrets that I lost. The people did me a favor in a way. They extended my life. I'm enjoying my life, every day of it.
You're healthier.
Oh, yes. I go to the gym every day, 5 days a week. I have a personal trainer. I look like a Greek god. I lost 40 pounds. I kept off
and you made
30
money.
of them.
You made money
yes,
losing weight.
I did.
You're the ultimate capitalist.
Yes. Well, I am a capitalist and successful at it, too. But I love this country, and I love this city, and I think I gave something to this city, and I hope I'll be remembered not primarily for bringing fiscal stability to the city, which I did. Brought it its first balanced budget in 15 years, and then had 10 balanced budgets before I turned it over to Mayor David Dinkins. But I prefer to be remembered as someone who stood up and defended New York City and gave it back its sense of pride without arrogance and made people feel better about themselves.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, NJIT, Wells Fargo, PSE&G, Johnson & Johnson, and by New Jersey Sharing Network. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.